Hello. It's great to be here today. I know the title of my talk was uh, Why Decentralization is Important. But as I got to, oh, hello. Did I start
Hey,
too
David.
fast?
I think we just maybe I was thinking maybe I'll just let you go live. It's great to have you, David. Um, yeah, we're trying to stay on time. I know we're a few minutes late, so I don't want to take too much time, but I really appreciate you coming and sharing. I know it's a little bit late for you in Europe, so I really appreciate all your work you do in the decentralized web, and I follow your Twitter, your tweets, and I think a lot of people here should too. So, but yeah, I think I'll let you just get started, David. I want to hear.
Awesome.
Are
So
you ready to go?
yeah, it's great to be here. Yep. And like I mentioned, the my talk is titled "Why Decentralization is Important." But as I started writing it, I fell into this almost like realization that decentralization has been, I feel like, on the decline. So I feel like peak decentralization in terms of like total mass happened somewhere between 2016 and 2017, and then as the blockchain ecosystem started evolving, the number of people focused on purely decentralized protocols like Bitcoin and Handshake started going down, and a lot of the new attention coming in was focused on uh, other other features, and decentralization got deprioritized. And so I decided that I wanted to focus my talk more around that decline and try and reason through what caused the decline and how we can jump back into it, and what sort of strategies are eroding us and what sort of strategies can be used to build back stronger. So just to kind of prove out my point, I don't know if how many people here were around in 2015 using Bitcoin, but a key use case for Bitcoin that used to be very like powerful and motivating was remittances. And so a lot of people would earn money in the United States and then send it back home overseas. And when you compared the utility of Bitcoin versus standard rails like Western Union, Bitcoin was cheaper, it was easier, it was faster, you were subject to less scrutiny. And so Bitcoin was like really solving a key problem for the remittances space. And today, Bitcoin's actually no longer really used for remittances. And similarly, you also used to be able to use Bitcoin to buy things online. And that's something that has similarly kind of fallen off. Bitcoin's really just good for buying and holding. And you get some stuff here and there. Lightning is kind of getting off the ground. You have Bitcoin ordinals. But relative to 2016, I think we have moved backwards. And when we dissect why, I think that a big part of the problem comes down to uh, a pattern that Microsoft pioneered. It also happens on accident, so it doesn't have to be intentional. But Microsoft was very intentional with a pattern that they called embrace, extend, extinguish. And it's a strategy, I think, pioneered by Microsoft, most famously used by Google to take over Android, where you take this like open, decentralized, not necessarily even decentralized, just open source and free community. You embrace the community and the openness, you extend it, you offer a bunch of new features, and then over time, these features become more and more proprietary, and you find ways to make the community dependent on those features. And then over time, you make the community unable to survive without the proprietary features. And now you've captured this once open and growing community, and you've pulled it entirely under the umbrella of Google. And so in the case of Android, this was like super explicit. Google bought an open source operating system. They made a much better developer kit, but the new developer kit was proprietary. Developers started building apps on the proprietary extensions, and then Google, started inserting surveillance. But the Android phone, over time, as Google became, more and more predatory, the open source version of Android became less and less useful because fewer apps ran on it. It ran on fewer phones, right? As phones came out with new hardware, there was no drivers because Google had kind of dried up the open source ecosystem, oftentimes by just hiring all of the bright developers. And so Google was able to completely take over Android. And now we have Android today, which should, for all intents and purposes, be considered a highly privacy invading closed source operating system. And we see similar patterns in Bitcoin and in decentralization, but unlike with the Google case, like I think Google with Android was like very intentionally, maliciously executing a playbook. And in the case of blockchains, the playbook was not, there's not some evil mastermind re-centralizing the ecosystem. It's just that, and I'll use Namebase as an example. You have this software that's like 50% good. And I hope no one takes offense for me calling, both Bitcoin and Handshake alike 50% good. They're like fun to use, but it's also not the most convenient thing to run a full node and be fully decentralized. And when you get a platform like Namebase coming along, they solve a lot of UX issues. They turn it from 50% good to say 80% good, but they introduce a little bit of centralization. You get this relaxing of both community expectations, right? You get this cognitive dissonance in the community where Namebase comes in, they're a really good thing. It makes it a lot easier. It's bringing a lot of new people into the Handshake community. And to be fully transparent, like Namebase is the reason I started actively using Handshake is like Namebase made it so easy to buy my own domain. And that was really like the gateway drug to Handshake for me. But at the same time, because it's centralized, you get this dissonance in the community. The old guard kind of relaxes and is like, okay, the centralization is bringing a lot of good. Maybe it's worth tolerating this centralization. And then you bring in a whole bunch of new people. The new people are the growth, right? They don't get to experience the growth. The old people experience growth of the community. The new people don't get to experience that growth because they are the growth. And then when the next feature, we go from 80% good to 90% good with more centralization being introduced. The old guard is maybe a little bit more nervous and intimidated and slow to accept the centralization, but the new guard is like really eager for the growth. They haven't seen growth yet. The growth is a lot more exciting to them than it is to the old guard, and you just fall down this slippery slope. And I think we saw that Bitcoin turned into Ethereum. Ethereum had lots of centralized elements, and Infura was a big one. And then that turned into DeFi. DeFi was even more centralized than Ethereum was, especially with platforms like 1inch and other liquidity routing protocols that were like fully centralized and just couldn't mechanically exist in a decentralized world. And then we moved on to NFTs, which are even more centralized. And again, at each stage, you're only relaxing the plot a little bit. And there's no mastermind here thinking, I'm going to embrace, extend, extinguish blockchains. It's just blockchains on their own aren't that fun to use. And when you add a little bit of centralization, they get more fun. And you just keep progressively adding centralization, and you lose the decentralized aspect. So it's a tough problem, and I don't have a really good solution for it. It's one that I've been aware of since maybe 2015 and nervous about. And I think at that point, I was just optimistic that it would work itself out and we would figure out some way to fight it. At this point, I don't think we have like an antidote or a great way to fight the embrace, extend, extinguish pattern and its less malicious variants. But I can share basically 3 strategies that I understand create resilience. And so the first one, and I might point to like IPv4 as an example of this, is to just have an experience that works really well and is complete on its own in a decentralized form. So if Bitcoin and Handshake weren't starting at say 50% user friendly, but we're starting at say 95% user friendly, it's a lot easier for the community to see something like Namebase and say, this is not worth it. We're just not going to use Namebase. Another example of an app that I think has achieved this well enough is Signal. Signal is an encrypted messaging app that is centralized, but it's very private and it's very protective of its users. and extensions to the Signal protocol, which compromise on the encryption standard, just don't make any sense. And like things that you couldn't do. You used to not be able to do group chat. You used to not be able to do group video chat. They've made progress on the encryption, but even back when those were completely unavailable, people did not migrate off of Signal for the sake of not having group chat, because Signal for one-to-one messaging worked well enough that users didn't care. It didn't, the trade-off of introducing centralization did not improve the user experience enough to be worth the sacrifice. And that's not a place that blockchain is in. There is no fully decentralized blockchain where the users are willing to just like outright refuse any centralized solutions because the centralized solutions are not convenient enough. It's just centralization is too convenient at this point. So yeah, strategy one is to make something that's just good enough in the first place, that you don't feel like you need centralization to improve the experience. The second like pattern that's resilient is, I guess, what I'm calling like a lava moat. And this is where BitTorrent finds itself. So BitTorrent has been a pretty long-lasting protocol, and it's been quite resilient to centralization over the years, and it's not been taken over. And the main reason is because it sits in this like legal hot zone where as soon as you step outside of pure decentralization in BitTorrent, whatever centralization gets introduced just like dies by a holy beam cast down by Zeus. And I think a great example of this is popcorn time. So I don't know how many people remember, but back in 2014, this app became really popular called Popcorn Time. It introduced a little bit of centralization. It made the user experience like 100 times better. Popcorn Time blew up extremely fast. They got to like 1 million users in like 1 month, which back then was like way harder to do than it is today. It was absolute wildfire. Everyone was talking about it, and then they got into legal trouble and they just died in a holy fire because they had enough centralization that there was a target that Zeus could strike, and Zeus struck it without any mercy, and Popcorn Time died. And so BitTorrent has been resilient to centralization pressure just by function of any centralization that gets introduced just gets torn clean off pretty much within a month of it existing. And so that's like that's something that you may like, maybe it is better to have that sort of heat on you. Blockchain doesn't benefit from that heat right now. Ethereum, we've seen a little bit of this with Tornado Cash. There's a lot of fear that staking protocols, proof of stake protocols, are going to be subject to KYC and are going to be regulated soon. But it hasn't really happened yet, and it's certainly not this like sudden struck out of the sky. And so I don't know if we want that sort of lava moat to exist for blockchains, but if it did, I can guarantee you that a greater percentage of the space that cares about the space would be focused on maintaining decentralization. And then the final strategy is one that Bitcoin has used that I think hasn't worked super well for Bitcoin, but it's worked well enough. So Bitcoin today remains quite decentralized. And even when the new fad kicks in, like ordinals is a new fad in Bitcoin, ordinals is only taking root in the Bitcoin ecosystem because it's a truly fully decentralized protocol. And a lot of the OGs don't like it. They don't like JPEGs on their blockchain. But at the same time, you can't claim that ordinals are not decentralized. Lots of people are running full nodes, and like there's no attack surface. And so Bitcoin has managed to protect its own ecosystem through a strategy that I call zealotry. So instead of like a lava moat, you basically give every single denizen of the Bitcoin ecosystem their own personal bucket of lava. You just instruct them, if you see something that's not decentralized, just like throw lava at that thing, like dump your lava bucket on that centralized thing and kick it out of the ecosystem. And this hasn't worked super well because it's resulted in a lot of friendly fire, a lot of accidental fire. We even see that with ordinals. A lot of Bitcoin maximalists and OGs, tearing into ordinals, really disliking it, even though it's actually not a centralized element. And so the result of Bitcoin zealotry is like a very burned and stressed out ecosystem. I think it's been successful in ensuring that Bitcoin remains decentralized, but at the same time, it's also driven away a lot of talent. A lot of the big talent in Bitcoin in 2013 and 14 has since retired under the heat. It's just a very stressful thing to be a Bitcoin core developer. And so they've either gone anonymous or retired entirely. And then perhaps even worse than driving old people away, new people just see this you come into the space as a young, bright, naive mind. You have a bunch of good ideas that have a lot of merit. You don't realize that these ideas are centralized. Bitcoin devs just completely tear into you, throw a bunch of lava on you for having centralized ideas. And then you're like, well, I'm going to go hang out in Ethereum where they don't throw buckets of lava on me because I just don't like lava. And so Bitcoin has had a really hard time bringing new talent into the space because it's so hostile to centralized ideas, and new talent is just necessarily has a lot of centralized ideas until they've been, I don't want to use the word indoctrinated, but I will, until they've been, brought up to understand the principles of decentralization and what the limitations on your ideas are supposed to be. And Bitcoin is not able to get new people over that learning curve without burning them so hard that they run away. And so, yeah, I guess in the spirit of the title of my talk, I do want to briefly give an example of why decentralization is important. I do think, as much as it's struggling, I think it's extremely important. And I can only give one example, but one example that's very dear to my heart is the example of the YouTube streamer. And so you have this phenomenon where a YouTube streamer starts making custom content. Could be about chess, or it could be parody videos, or it could be anime reviews. And when they do this, at some point they cross over into an income level where they can pivot their entire life to be around it. And whether it's 5 to 8K a month, if you've been making 5 to 8K a month for 6 months in a row, you might do something like leave your job and put your full life into taking care of an audience that appreciates you. And by the time you're at that size, you have 500,000 people, 100,000, 500,000 people that are really excited about the content you produce and the work you make. And then one day YouTube comes down with this new rule, and it's well, if a content creator has more than 1 in 1,000 words are a slur or a curse word, then we're going to demonetize all their videos. And suddenly, this content creator, swearing on YouTube has been kosher for over a decade. All of your videos have swears in it. And your whole personality, incorporates a light amount of swearing. And suddenly, that 8K a month you were making is now $200 because there's only one video left that's monetized. Your fans don't even like your new content because when you're not swearing, you feel like you can't be yourself. And so this happened, you lost all of your income, not because your fans turned on you, not because the people who appreciate you suddenly stopped appreciating your work. It's because some external entity, unrelated to any of you, the creator, or your audience, decided, we just don't swear on this platform anymore. And you've already left your job. So now you have no income, no job. You can't go back to that job because you burned bridges when you left, and you're just stuck for a bit. And of course, this plays over across many different industries. A personal struggle of mine is credit cards. I'm not even kidding. 80% of the purchases I make, my credit card gets declined. I have 5 credit cards, and it's almost 1 in 3 times that I go to even McDonald's, I will have all 5 cards get declined, and I just can't buy food that moment. Or I'll have to have a friend or the person in the line behind me buy my food. It would be really great to have a protocol where when I hit the send my money to this person button, the money goes through. and the system that's designed to protect me from fraud doesn't end up stopping me from eating. So just to like conclude the whole talk, I think that decentralization is super important. I think decentralization is struggling a lot. That our space has shrank since 2015, and the main cause is some variant of extending our space with centralized things that make it better. And the best we can do to fix it is basically that I know. I hope that in the next 5 years someone has a better strategy, can offer a fourth idea. But the first idea is just launch your decentralized protocol with a really good experience in the first place. I point to Signal as an example of this. The second one is build decentralization in areas where being not decentralized is super scary. And examples of this would be BitTorrent, Silk Road, and Tornado Cash. And then the third one would be find some way to produce this religious zealotry that in Bitcoin proved to be very effective at achieving the goal. But maybe we can iterate on what Bitcoin did and find a way to both be zealous and also not throw lava on newcomers who don't understand our culture yet. And yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap up there. I can answer any questions that have come up.
Awesome. Thank you so much, David. Yeah, we have a Q&A section. I'm going to show on. I saw a poll just pop up where So this is from Fernando Falchi, OG here in the community. I don't know if you can read it, David, but it's people new to HNS. Is HNS community lava free? I don't know if I'm. Do you know what that is?
I would say
I'm honest.
I'm more of an outsider than an insider, but from what I've seen, I would say it's mostly lava free. On the other hand, sometimes it does get into fights with, say, unstoppable domains. And again, I think there are merits to these fights, but at the same time, they do have a taste of lava to them. So yeah, I would say HNS is not lava free. I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing. It's just, yeah, it's tough. It's tough to know where to draw the line.
Got it. Thanks, David. We can extend a few more minutes for questions. Being told, Jahan asks, you can see here that. Do you have some ideas or what apps you think would be great to be built on Handshake?
Yeah, so I think probably general, like, I don't know if this is strictly possible, but it would be great to have a general naming system for wallet addresses. I would love to have an app where I just like open up my phone and then instead of having to paste in an address that my friend sent me, I just have a name, Jeff. I just send coins to Jeff, and Jeff owns that HNS name, and it's global. That's probably what's been on the top of my mind the most.
Great. I mean, I think there's some projects. I mean, it's a true point. I mean, there are startups that'll be sharing that are tackling that. Another question here is, how can I explain to people DIDs from HNS startup perspective? Miguel, do you get that?
Yeah, I feel like that's not a question I'm really equipped to answer. DIDs are confusing even to me. So
Great. I've seen suggestions already from Ricardo, who'll be sharing later too, from Universe. Okay, I think we got most of the. I'm going to go jump into chat. There's a little bit of an echo now, but okay, we got a poll. Is decentralization struggling? Actually, David, it was your tweet that inspired. There's a little echo, but I'll keep talking. There was a tweet you said where you said that you think it was peak decentralization. I think you said 2017, if I recall. So I kind of feel like I agree with you. That's what inspired me also to invite you. Also, your leadership and your tweets and your writing is great. But it's a little bit scary. I guess to wrap it up, your session, honestly, you said you kind of like feel like it's trending down. Isn't that scary to you? I mean, aren't we trying to get trending up in decentralization? I mean, don't you want to try to buck the trend and get it turned around? I'm not. Maybe you're muted. Okay, there you go.
Oh, I was going to say, I definitely feel like it's concerning, but at the same time, I also feel like it's very decentralization is very compelling, and we get hit with if you look for examples of why we need decentralization, you find them in the news like every day. And so I do think if decentralization continues to trend down, it will hit like a bottoming out point where people will realize how important it is, and it'll rally back up. Hopefully, when it turns around, we have more strategies and can do better on the next iteration. But I do think that decentralization is not going to die. It's going to be important as long as the internet exists, and people will get behind it, and it will have another heyday, probably on the heels of some disaster like Google taking over all of TLS or something like that.
Yeah, another trend, I don't know if it's from your writing or others, but there's protocols that have existed, like telephone numbers. I remember reading about like AT&T and the Bell system tried to monopolize, phone numbers and the telephone system in the United States of America. And there was a breakup of Bell systems. Obviously, we don't have enough time to get into that, but that's just, I think it's always, even before the internet, there was companies trying to centralize and control the system or communication or the platform, right? I mean, it's not just the internet. I think it's existed even before the internet in various forms.
Yeah, definitely. If all else fails, we have regulators and regulation. So you can go to the polls and vote, and you can call your congressman and say, Google is a bad actor. Let's do something about it. And that is a means to accomplish things. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, thanks, Steve. I know it's also late there for you, and I really appreciate what you do for for the internet and decentralized and future web. I don't know if there's some last words or links or things you want to share for the people here today.
I'm between projects at the moment, so it's just my Twitter handle. But if you pay attention, I'm working in the background on something exciting that I hope to share with the world soon.
Awesome. Thank you again, David, for agreeing to come today. And if there's ways I or others in the community can help, I think we always willing to support whatever you do next. So thank you.
It was great to be here.
All right. So we're going to move to the next session, which is Colin Burke, block domains. And that will be in another room. So we'll end this room and go to that room. He's going to talk about data, a little bit more handshake focused. David was a great kind of way to get things started about decentralization. We're going to get more into focused handshake specific content with Colin's talk, which I'm looking forward to. He's done a lot of research and data of the handshake ecosystem over the years. So I think we're going to switch over now. I'm still getting the hang of the flow today, but I think we're going to end this one and see you in the next room.